Hello there, I'm Joel Larby in Hong Kong and welcome to View TV News. Coming up on tonight's show, Chief Executive Carrie Lam stands her ground on the extradition law, saying the changes will go ahead as planned despite any legal challenges. But the plan faces further backlash. The Bar Association says the exclusion of commercial crimes shows the bill is a step backward. And the city's NGOs under fire once again after documents reveal bosses of the public-funded groups are paid fat salaries. First up tonight, Chief Executive Carrie Lam insists plans to change the extradition law won't be delayed despite the legal challenges being mounted. That's in response to billionaire Joseph Lau's application for a judicial review against the amendment yesterday. He's convicted of corruption in Macau, but is in hiding here.
Well, as a matter of fact, the Hong Kong SL government is facing legal challenges on a daily basis, but that doesn't mean that we should put on hold important work which is for the public interest of Hong Kong.
The proposal will be tabled for its first and second reading at LegCo tomorrow. Lam says she won't comment on individual cases because the process hasn't started. As for whether the bill will cover retroactive cases, the CE says a committee will discuss those details at a later date. Meanwhile, Legal Functional Constituency member Dennis Kwok says the amendment isn't clear on retroactive cases, so legal disputes may surface even once it's passed.
There needs to be something on retroactive cases, because how else can you extradite this guy back to Taiwan? So the courts must have a clear judgment on this issue. If not, the Taiwan case or other cases will become a point of contention.
And the Hong Kong Bar Association has condemned the amendment as well, saying the exclusion of commercial crimes shows the bill is a step backwards. That's specifically when it comes to international cooperation in criminal justice. The association also fears the changes will offer nothing more than the illusion of legal protection to business people here. In a statement, the group points out that while some crimes might be exempt under the new amendments, people could easily be charged with other offences still covered. The Bar Association also accused the government of trying to make the public believe there's a pressing need to close a legal loophole that's impacting crimes involving the mainland.
So, to me, it is a loophole that I must plug. I respect, of course, other opinions, and that is why at the Bills Committee we will be explaining more to questions that will be raised with my colleagues at the time.
To other local news now, and the Social Welfare Department has revealed top bosses at 4 of the city's NGOs pocketed massive wages, some which run into the millions of dollars. In one case, a community services secretary at the Tung Wah Group of Hospitals was paid more than $2.75 million from 2017 to 2018. That's even more than what the Social Welfare Department's Deputy Director earns. The department based its findings on annual reports from 29 institutions. Unions say the government should strengthen its monitoring of how NGOs use their funds. Labor Chief Law Chi Kwong says the organisations often count fringe benefits in their compensation, but they shouldn't be making more than department bosses. All right, well, on that note, let's take a look at the world of business. Starting off with a look at the markets today. Here in Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index turned in a mixed session, closing up 0.2% after a slow start. Gaming stocks led the way, but real estate lagged. Now, Chinese benchmark index seesawed before closing at a new 10-month high. The Shanghai Composite also added 0.2% as investors cheered this week's manufacturing data and trade talk optimism. Investor favourite Tencent is changing tack to shore up its stock, announcing a 10% buyback of shares. The move is subject to shareholder approval at the company's AGM in May. The Chinese internet giant has been one of the most impressive performers on the Hong Kong market, with shares up 45% since last October. At the same time, reports from CNBC say the company is testing a game streaming platform called Start, which could rival Google's Stadia. While separately, Bloomberg says Tencent is planning on raising about $5 billion through a bond sale, which would go towards financing mature debt, among other things. Well, at the beginning of the week, all Wall Street could talk about was Lyft's incredible market debut. The ride-hailing app was the first of its kind to go public there, but on its second trading day, shares plunged, closing well below their $72 IPO price. As Conway Gittins reports, investors have some questions over the newly listed stock.
Wall Street's joyride with Lyft's market debut came to an abrupt stop Monday. In only their second day of trading, shares of Lyft plunged 12% by the closing bell, closing below the $72 initial public offering price. Guggenheim Securities started coverage of the stock with a neutral rating, citing, quote, lack of visibility on the path to profitability. The first ride-hailing app to sell shares on the public stock market lost $911 million in 2018. And that's not the only issue. Reuters Silicon Valley reporter Heather Somerville.
Other questions that have come up from investors during the past 2 weeks as Lyft was on its roadshow is, what is the company's strategy for autonomous vehicles? How is it going to deal with the many labor disputes it has with its drivers? And also the dual-class share structure that Lyft has. Now, this is a share structure that is very common among highly valued technology company and a point of contention with public market investors. That's because it gives certain shareholders, primarily the founders, more votes per share than IPO buyers.
Lyft's swift fall is bringing back dark memories for tech investors. Facebook also stumbled after an initial opening rally, and without the IPO's underwriters propping up the stock, it too fell on the second day and took 14 months before it once again traded above its IPO price. And some tech investors may be cautious after getting burned in the Snap IPO. Shares of the parent of Snapchat are 1/3 below their IPO. The sense of deja vu comes as other highly sought-after IPOs sit in the wings, namely Uber and Pinterest. These each have something in common with Lyft. They are still losing money.
Singapore Airlines has grounded 2 of its Boeing 787-10 jets because of issues with its Rolls-Royce engines. Checks of the Dreamliners found premature blade deterioration. The Trent 1010 is the latest version of an engine that has had a problematic entry into service. As of late February, Rolls-Royce said 35 787s were grounded globally because of engine blades corroding or cracking prematurely. But the manufacturer says its engineers are developing and testing a newer turbine blade. Meanwhile, Boeing is having to delay the rollout of its proposed software upgrade for its troubled 737 MAX jets, which have been involved in 2 recent deadly crashes. The company will now deliver the package, quote, in the coming weeks, after originally planning to deliver it to US regulators last week. More than 300 MAX jets have been grounded worldwide following the twin disasters. Boeing is under pressure from US lawmakers and aviation authorities around the globe to prove the jet's autopilot controls are safe. The US has scored a major and unlikely win in its trade war with China. Beijing is extending its crackdown on fentanyl-related substances, something the Trump administration has long blamed for fueling its opioid epidemic. Grace Lee has the story.
China has announced a new crackdown on the synthetic opioid fentanyl. It's a move that will likely be seen as a major win for Donald Trump, who has repeatedly called on Beijing to curb its spread as the U.S. faces an epidemic of opioid-related deaths. A Chinese security official made the announcement on Monday, saying that the government will add fentanyl-related substances to their list of controlled drugs. But he also added the main factor of fentanyl abuse in the U.S. is America itself.
If the United States truly wants to resolve its fentanyl abuse problem, it needs to strengthen its domestic work.
Fentanyl has been tied to already tense relations between Washington and Beijing, and the new laws might help their trade talks. Reuters' Michael Martina explains.
This is something that the United States had been urging China to do, and so it's pretty clear that China wants to show that it's being proactive on this as the issue had begun to weigh on U.S.-China trade relations. At the same time, they really went out of their way today to say that China's not responsible for the fentanyl abuse issue in the United States. President Trump had on multiple instances basically attacked China, saying that these drugs were flowing into the United States at record numbers and that China had basically been looking the other way. U.S. officials, including the U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, have said they basically hope to get China to address this fentanyl issue within the confines of any agreement that might come about on U.S. trade.
The U.S. Department of Justice says China's become the main source of fentanyl in the United States. According to U.S. custom agents, Americans have been ordering drugs from overseas via the dark web, and the volume of drugs coming into the country has shot upwards with online shopping. Trump has even called on China to apply the death sentence for fentanyl dealers.
Okay, time for a break, but do stay with us. Up next, is Britain stuck in limbo? Parliament once again struggles to find alternatives to Theresa May's EU divorce deal.
Infinite visions. View TV 6.
Book with Expedia's add-on and save up to 56%. Book your flight first, then book your hotel anytime before you fly and save up to 56%. Get big savings with Expedia.
A mix of celebrity guests, edgy musical acts, games and sketches.
Have you ever farted while
all the time? The most sought party in the world. Hosted by one of the most lovable Englishmen in TV. The Late Late Show with James Corden. A talk show that guarantees to entertain you. Friday night at 10:30 on View TV 6. Have a blast. Some say flying is safer than driving a car. But for some, boarding a plane can be a leap of faith. When something goes wrong during a flight,
the engine's on fire!
It can be catastrophic.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
Investigate the stories behind horrific crashes. Unravel the secrets of air traffic organizations. Solve the air crash mysteries. Mayday. Saturday night at 8 on View TV 6. The mystery. The discovery. The friendship. The love. A remarkable portrait of childhood. Steven Spielberg's touching tale of a homesick alien. Remains a piece of movie magic for young and old. Theatre 96, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Sunday night at 9 on View TV 6.
Invest wisely. Be an expert in risk management. To beat the market, market analysis is crucial. 24K Finance. Channel 96, View TV 6.
Welcome back. One of the EU's top officials has given the UK 3 options over Brexit: vote on a deal in the coming day, leave without an agreement, or ask for a longer delay. That ultimatum comes as Prime Minister Theresa May chairs a 5-hour cabinet meeting today, following another night of tension in Parliament. Michelle Hennessy has the latest.
British lawmakers failed again on Monday to break through the Brexit deadlock, pushing the country's impending departure from the EU deeper into chaos.
The noes have it. The noes have it. The noes have it. The noes have it.
In Monday's vote, lawmakers voted on 4 last-minute options for Brexit, and all were defeated. MPs have now failed to find their own solution on how exactly Britain should Brexit twice, and have voted down the Prime Minister's proposal 3 times. Brexit Minister Stephen Barclay says Britain now risks crashing out of the EU without a deal.
It has once again failed to find a clear majority for any of the options. And yet the result of the House's decision on Friday not to endorse the withdrawal agreement means that the default legal position is that the UK will leave the EU in just 11 days' time.
That could be a nightmare scenario for a lot of international businesses.
Order!
The option that came closest to winning a majority on Monday was to keep Britain in a customs union, which was defeated by just 3 votes. So what next? There were hints on Monday from May's government that she could try to put her deal forward for a 4th time. And the leader of the opposition Labour Party is pushing for a 3rd round of indicative votes.
The margin of defeat for one of the options tonight was very narrow indeed. If it's good enough for the Prime Minister to have 3 chances at her deal, then I suggest that possibly the House should have a chance to consider again the options that we had before us today in a debate on Wednesday.
Theresa May is due to hold cabinet meetings with senior ministers on Tuesday. It's expected to take around 5 hours as they try to figure out the government's next move. She's facing a spiralling crisis, with her own party deeply divided on what that move should look like. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking. As things stand, Britain will leave the EU at 10 p.m. on April 12th.
Former US Vice President Joe Biden has hit back at claims of misconduct ahead of his widely anticipated announcement of a presidential run. 2 women have come forward with allegations. One, a Democratic Party activist, claims Biden made her feel uncomfortable by kissing her at a campaign event in 2014. The former VP denies acting inappropriately and says this is a smear campaign. On Monday, another woman came forward alleging Biden touched her inappropriately at a 2009 political fundraiser. Biden has not yet said whether he'll run for president in 2020, but is expected to throw his hat into the ring soon. Algeria's ailing president will step down before his mandate ends on April 28, according to the country's state media. Abdelaziz Bouteflika has ruled Algeria for 2 decades and was initially seeking a 5th term in office with elections set for this month. That decision triggered weeks of widespread protests, with many demanding his immediate resignation to allow a younger generation of leaders to take charge. For now, it isn't exactly clear when Bouteflika will leave or whether opposition parties will approve of a caretaker cabinet. Turkey's president has suffered a major setback in local elections, which saw his party lose control of the capital, Ankara. Recep Tayyip Erdogan's AK party also appears set for defeat in the country's largest city, Istanbul, indicating voters are fed up with the ongoing economic slump. Emily Wither has the details.
These scenes haven't been seen in the Turkish capital city of Ankara for over a decade, and represent a severe setback to Turkey's powerful president, Tayyip Erdogan. His ruling AK party has lost control of the country's capital for the first time in a local election to the country's main opposition party. But perhaps more significant is a loss here in Istanbul, Turkey's largest city, where Erdogan launched his political career. A defeat here is a broader sign of dwindling support as Turkey's economic downturn weighs heavily on voters. The results in Istanbul are so close to call that both sides are claiming the narrowest of victories. And despite the winner being disputed, signs like these have popped up all over the city. They say "Thank you, Istanbul" and feature Erdogan and his party's candidate, the former Prime Minister, Binali Yildirim. Speaking to his supporters, Erdogan appeared to concede defeat in Istanbul, but added his party would appeal results wherever needed.
I believe the only reason we couldn't get the results we wanted in some cities is that we couldn't express ourselves enough to our nation and we failed to win their hearts.
The loss came despite the president's daily rallies and overwhelmingly supportive media coverage. Erdogan has now promised to focus on Turkey's troubled economy in the run-up to national elections in 2023. A currency crisis after last year's election dragged the lira down by 30% and tipped the economy towards recession. With unemployment rising, some voters appeared ready to punish the president. Last week, he called himself the boss of the economy. With so many concerned with where it's going, it shows despite Erdogan's 16-year grip on power here, he's not immune to a shift in public opinion.
Well, turning to Africa now, and an artist in Nigeria is transforming trash into art. And thanks to the power of social media, Funmi Abdubi's eco-friendly creations are becoming popular as decorations in homes and office spaces. Angela Ukumadu reports.
A flower decoration made out of paper. Funmi Adubi is leading an art class at a studio in Lagos, teaching students about paper craft. The self-taught artist says she wants to inspire others to use unwanted paper by transforming it into colorful, decorative pieces of art.
The main story behind it is practically recycling. Instead of trashing paper, like the benefits of or the uses of paper, you can actually use old magazines and make flowers out of them. You can quill, you can frame them, you can use them to make boxes, you can use them to make decorative pieces for your homes. So it's basically about recycling and not trashing them.
Adubi started her craft in 2016 after selling off a confectionery business. Although the materials used are simple, just paper and glue, complex styles can take up to 15 days to make. Her pieces start at $40 and are priced according to the intricacy of the design. The work is marketed on social media and it's attracting the attention of both event companies and individual clients.
The Nigerians are actually adapting to it. Like, whenever they see my flowers, they're like, wow, is this really paper? Can I touch it? What materials do you use? As in, how did you do this? And that's why I train people too, to make them know that you can actually make something beautiful out of just papers.
At this photography studio, her artwork forms part of the props being used for a baby photo shoot. She says clients usually want her creation to liven up an office or home space, but increasingly, they are also being used as centerpieces for events.
All right, time for sports now. Premier League action first, and goals from Aaron Ramsey and Alexandre Lacazette have helped Arsenal to a 2-0 win over Newcastle United. The victory lifts them to third place on the ladder, above rivals Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United. Ramsey found his way through a packed defence on the half-hour mark to score with a low shot. That was before Frenchman Lacazette put the game to bed in the 83rd minute with a chip over the keeper. The result puts Arsenal on 63 points with 7 games left, 2 above Spurs and Man United, with Chelsea a further point behind. Players for the United States women's football team have denied that a lawsuit over alleged gender discrimination is just about the money. All 28 members of the World Cup champion US women's squad were named as plaintiffs in a lawsuit filed last month, which claims they're not paid the same as their male counterparts. While getting paid equally is important, the players hope to see systematic changes to the sport.
Also leaving the game in a better place than you found it. That's sort of mission number one, with winning on this team. So I think we take that very seriously and are very proud of the progress that we've made, and hopefully, as Kristen was saying, passing the torch to the next generation. They will not be fighting the same fights and, be left in a better position than we were.
All right, now, how many of you were caught out with April Fool's jokes yesterday? Well, if you were, don't worry, because you weren't on your own, because more than a few New England Patriots fans were shocked after their legendary American football quarterback Tom Brady announced his retirement on Twitter. The prank immediately went viral until an update was delivered about an hour later, letting relieved supporters know that he was just goofing around. The six-time Super Bowl champion gained more than 100,000 followers on the social media site within 2 hours of his original post. Brady, who turns 42 in August, has addressed the subject of retirement before, saying he hopes to play until he's 45. All right, that is it for now. Do make sure you join me again later on for an update on all the stories shaping your world. I'm Joel Larby, and this is View TV News. Have a good night.
Coming up next, My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic Season 6.